Chapter 4. My mind spun at light speed. I felt dizzy and really, really scared. I didn't know what had happened to Tara, but I knew we needed to get help and fast. I jammed my hand into my front pocket and yanked out the phone Mom gave me. My fingers were trembling as I punched in our phone number. Meanwhile, Landon had dived down again and vanished beneath the surface in a desperate search for Tara. And what was that thing I saw way out in the lake? I wondered. There was no way. No way. It could have been a shark. Yet that's what it had looked like, the fin of a giant shark. No matter, I had other things to worry about, like, what if it was some kind of shark? What if it got Tara? I was about to punch in the last digit of our phone number when I heard a splash from behind me. I turned and saw Tara. Her head had popped up a few feet on the other side of the rowboat, on the opposite side from where we had been looking for her. Her blonde hair stuck to the sides of her face, and she was smiling, and I now knew she had only been playing a joke. Then Landon popped up in front of me. I still can't find her, he shrieked. She's over there, I said, pointing on the other side of the rowboat. She was only trying to scare us into thinking something had happened to her. Had you going, didn't I? Tara called out as she began swimming arm over arm back to the dock. You totally freaked us out, I said, holding up the small phone. I almost called my mom and dad for help. Yeah, well, you deserved it. If your aim with the life vest hadn't been so bad, I wouldn't have fallen in. Landon reached the dock and I helped him out of the water too. Tara reached the dock and I grabbed both of her hands and pulled her up. The red life vest I'd tossed was floating next to the rowboat and I reached down and plucked it out of the water. This is just great, Landon said angrily, water dripping from his drenched clothing. He spread his arms wide. Now we're both soaked. Oh, quit being a crybaby. It's just a little water. It's not going to kill you. Let's go home and get changed. Tara was right. A little bit of water wasn't going to hurt us. It was the gigantic beast lurking in the water that we would have to worry about, and we'd be seeing that creature soon enough. Chapter 5. While Landon and Tara went home to change their clothes, I picked up my fishing pole and made a few casts into the lake. Last year, I caught a nice-sized bass while fishing from the dock. All the while, I thought about the strange thing I'd seen far out in the lake. Of course, it was foggy, and I didn't get a good look at it, but it looked like a fin. Although I knew that was impossible, it must have been a boat or my imagination. Maybe I just thought I saw something. Whatever it was, I didn't see it again. And although I made a few dozen casts while waiting for Landon and Tara, I didn't catch any fish. 15 minutes later, Landon and Tara came back wearing fresh, dry clothing. Try to stay out of the water this time, Landon said to his sister as they walked along the dock. I had already put on my life vest, and I handed one to Landon and one to Tara. You guys ready? I asked. We are now. I knelt down and held the boat steady while Tara and Landon got in and sat. Then I untied the two lines securing it to the dock and got in myself. I sat in the back near the motor, and Landon sat in the middle. Tara was seated at the front. There was about an inch of rainwater in the bottom of the boat, left there by the overnight storm. I picked up a large red coffee can and handed it to Landon. Bail out the water, I said, and I'll get us on our way. Landon began scooping up water and dumping it over the side of the boat. I pressed the start button on the electric motor, and it instantly hummed to life. The boat began to move forward slowly. The lake looks creepy with all this fog, Tara said as the boat slipped through the water. I think it looks sort of cool, Landon said as he scooped up some water with the coffee can and dumped it over the side of the boat. It looks like the beginning of a scary movie. We had no idea how right Landon would turn out to be. Chapter 6. Where are we headed? Tara asked. I thought we'd try fishing in the shallows near Timber Lake Campground, I replied. Last year, my dad and I caught a bunch of big bass at a spot not too far from shore. It was a great place to fish, and not many people knew about it. Landon finished bailing the water out of the boat and set the coffee can at his feet. My uncle said he caught a 6-pound bass last week, he said. Wouldn't it be great to catch one that big? I bet a fish that big would put up quite a fight. I bet he had a hard time getting him into the net. What kind of lures are we going to use? Tara asked. I'm going to use the rubber crayfish, I said. That's what I caught my last big fish with. Not me. I'm going to use a big spinner, Landon said. He held it up to show me. The spinner was about 3 inches long with a treble hook at the bottom. A treble hook is actually 3 fish hooks joined by a single eye. There was a teardrop-shaped piece of metal hooked to it. You use the spinner by casting it out, letting it sink a couple of feet, then reeling it in slowly. The teardrop spun around as it was pulled through the water. They work pretty well depending on what the fish are biting on that particular day. Try a surface lure, something that makes some movement on top of the water. One of the 3 different lures we'll use. One of them has to work. Do you have one I can borrow? I opened up my tackle box and pawed through the plastic trays until I found a red and white lure with 2 treble hooks. Try this one. Careful of the hooks. By then, I'd forgotten about the strange fin-like object I'd seen farther out in the lake. I'd convinced myself it must have been another boat, and I never thought about it again. I was too excited to get started fishing. Doesn't this boat go any faster? Landon asked. I shook my head. It's only an electric motor, so it doesn't go very fast. I kept telling Dad to get one of those gas-powered outboards, but he says we don't need it. He says they make too much noise. It just seems like we're going awfully slow. Don't worry, we should be there in just a few minutes. I was distracted by a motion out of the corner of my eye, and I turned. If horror was a truck, I would have been run over. Landon gasped, and Tara shrieked. They too were seeing the same unbelievable thing I was seeing. The fin of what could only be from a giant shark, and the thing was heading in our direction.